said before, coaches play a pivotal role in society, and it's a thankless job. And there are lots of hours, and in many cases, it's stacked on top of a 9-to-5 job. So how do coaches find value in what they do? Where do they turn to, especially when it's a thankless job and the hours and the stress that goes along with coaching? So I'm going to look at that value in areas that we can explore to find value in everyday coaching. I have 6 areas that I think are very important for us to be fully aware of as coaches, to kind of see and feel the things that really put energy into our hearts, energy into our abilities to be there day to day. Those value areas are teaching moments, action moments, learning moments, gut feelings, creative moments, and performance moments. My biggest concern with coaches is that they use performance moments as their real value in coaching. They wait through an entire season or long periods of time to when their athletes are competing at a very high level. And if they achieve the mark, if they achieve the level that your expectations for them, you feel like, yeah, well done to me as a coach. There's my value as a coach. And my opinion is you're missing the mark. I think there are value moments scattered all over the landscape in everyday training. And the important part behind this presentation is to help you see and understand those things. To me, teaching moments are my number one value. I gain the most value as a coach in teaching moments. And I love putting my kids into exploration environments. I love challenging them to learn something new. I feel it's important that when kids are learning that you show them A and you say, this is what D looks like. And it's your job to go from A to B to C to D, and you don't hold their hand. Because if you hold your hand, they'll never own it. When they solve going from A to B to C to D, then they own it. They understand it. And what's great about that is when they understand it, they can then teach it to someone else. And, most coaches have their own way of explaining things. This is how we do X. And you put your kids in the pool and you say, okay, you're going to solve X. What happens is when they can communicate to each other, and you say, well, how did you solve X? The kid goes, well, I know coach said to do it this way, but I figured it out doing this way. So your kids actually interact with each other, and they use each other to help solve, to find that path to X. So it's really important that you teach them to use critical thinking, use cognitive flexibility, create exploration environments on a regular basis. And here's the best thing about creating exploration environments. I might come to the training area and say, listen, I had this great idea when I woke up this morning. It's fantastic. This is what we're going to work on and explore today. And they all jump in on it. And, pretty shortly a kid comes and says, Coach, I know we're exploring X, but I kind of got deviated into Y, and I think this is kind of cool. I think this is kind of interesting what I'm doing. And I look at them and I'm going, wow, that is cool. So all of a sudden, the whole group goes from what we're doing, what I wanted them to do, into what this kid, and pretty soon what comes out of that is a new skill or drill or something that we're going to do in day-to-day training that is a mainstay. It becomes a little bit institutional. And what I do to reward that kid is I name the drill after that kid. That kid gets to name whatever they want. They can, if it's Jimmy, it could be the Jimmy drill. And what happens with your kids, and this is important, is that when you create these environments and you teach them all these things, when they discover something new and it gets named after them, guess what happens the next time you put them into an exploration environment? They're all looking for something new, that nugget that coach loves, that names it after them. And so you create this vibrant, robust environment in your training environment, and your kids are just learning exponentially in leaps and bounds because you create that kind of environment for them, and they're taking ownership over what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. Action moments are the 100% day-to-day operations. It's when you're roll up your sleeves and you get involved in things that I've talked about, like exploration, challenging, day-to-day training. I feel like there's so many opportunities for you really to engage, involve, interact with your athletes, whether you're asking them how they're doing, why they're doing, or you challenge them to doing something completely new, something different. A performance is a best time in training or best skill in training, that type of thing. And you put a little bit on the line sometimes when you really get out there and you feel like, okay, I think I can challenge this kid today because they look like they warmed up really well and they look really good and I can throw it out there. when you lay it down and they achieve it. So it's that sort of visceral enjoyment of just putting it out there and then rising to the challenge. Action moments are involved in personal meetings when you're listening to them and you're involved in those conversations with them, and you might go into the personal meeting with a little bit of a script based on the history that you have with that athlete, but things come up and you steer it based on what you're thinking and seeing at that time. And to be honest with you, it's just enjoying being involved, being engaged in what you're doing every day, as opposed to showing up at the playing field or the pool or whatever, and putting them into a training session, putting them into a grid and standing back and just sort of watching them and not getting involved and never really coaching, never really saying anything, never even critiquing or any of those things. And when you do that, when you sort of stand backish and a little aloof from the whole operation of your day-to-day coaching, then I think you miss the opportunity to really enjoy the value of when you do something, when you say something and you turn on a light and you see a challenge received and answered type of thing. I think those are wonderful action moments in day-to-day that kind of give you value at the end of the coaching day. What you find from action moments and teaching moments is that it really enhances the coach-athlete relationship. It really helps them gain an understanding and a trust and find value in you as their coach and brings them back to the training area every day. It really helps the area of what I call the athlete holistic development area. It gives them ownership over what they're doing, which is the most important thing, because you want your athletes to take ownership over what they're doing. And as they explore and understand and rise to the challenge and meet the challenge of some of the action moments, they develop an understanding of self-belief, self-esteem, self-worth. They're all a part of those two areas that are day-to-day involved, that I think as you find value, they find value, and you help them grow as athletes. I love the feeling I get when I learn something new. When I read something in a book that sort of turns the light on for me and sort of makes sense. I love the fact that when I learned something new, I couldn't wait to get to the playing field or the pool or wherever I was working with kids to help them learn what I'd learned. So learning to me was value. It gained value. And I learned from reading, from listening to other people, from interacting with other coaches. Probably the person I learned the most from in the sport, in the coaching realm, was a man named Bill Boomer, who was a fantastic teacher. He was a wonderful person who shared his vision and his ideas and his concepts with me. And he pushed me really hard as a young coach to understand what it was he was trying to get to me. I think the first experiences I ever had with Bill, I had no clue what he was talking about. I mean, he would talk to me about what he was seeing and how he understood the sport, and I'd be nodding my head, and it'd take me like 6 to 8 months to figure out what it was that Bill understood. And next time I saw him, maybe a year later, I was all excited to show him that I fully understood what it was that he taught me the year before. But he had moved on, so it was something new, and it was constantly something new. So I love that excitement you get when you learn new things and you're able to bring it to your athletes. And I found that towards the end of my career, even though I was still learning and still feel today that I'm still learning, the group that taught me the most about sport were the athletes. When I really got to the point where I was allowing my athletes to explore, to speak back to me about what they felt, what they saw, what they understood, those conversations taught me more about sport than any conversation in any realm prior to that point. But the bottom line is, if you're not pushing yourself to learn, to read, to interact, to do all these things, to gain value from learning, you never feel that wonderful feeling you get when you're all excited about taking something new back to your athletes. Gut feelings are those on-the-spot, living-in-the-moment type decisions that might carry some trepidation involved with them, that lead some coaches to be very fearful of making those decisions or making those calls because of that feeling of trepidation. And my opinion is that gut feelings are real. I mean, there are a lot of neurons associated surrounding the gut, and that feeling you get, that queasiness in the stomach, is actually a very real thing. And I think that gut feelings are important because you're going to be put in a position where you have to make them, and you should trust your gut. Trust what your gut tells you. And you're not always necessarily going to make the right decision or the correct decision, but that puts you in a position where you have to learn from your mistakes. I mean, life is learning from a series of mistakes in some ways. But the bottom line is that when you learn from mistakes, you really have to own them. And by owning them and showing other people how you own them, if you've had an athlete and you made the wrong decision with the athlete, and you face them and look them in the eye and say, listen, I made a mistake. I did not deal with the circumstance the right way. I did not have all the information that I needed to make the decision that I made. And you have my apology for being this way. Then you teach the athlete how to own up to their mistakes. You teach athletes or young people how to own up to mistakes, that it's just part of the learning process in life. And I think the bottom line is, when you make the right call and you see the reaction to the right call that you make, it gives you value. It gives you value in who you are and what you're about. And you give yourself the feeling that you can trust those things as you move forward as a coach. I loved it when I got to that point in life as a coach and as a human being where my brain started to throw things at me like, what about this? What about that? So the sum of your life experiences, your brain with the sum of your life experience. So I say, think about this, think about that. And in many cases, they were great thoughts. And in all cases, they usually arrived at very inopportune times, more often not in the middle of the night. So thankfully, we have this handy little tool that you can use to, type those notes down, put it down in a notepad, go back to sleep, wake up in the morning, and explore the thoughts that you wrote down. Never, ever ignore creative thought. And I think even if it might even sound a little outlandish, don't ignore it, because your brain's going to throw stuff at you that's completely new out of the blue. It's going to solve problems that you've been chewing on for weeks or months or even longer than that. I had a case where I had a swimmer who really had sort of dystonic kind of fingers, and he didn't have very good feel for the water. And I was dealing with how to solve that problem for him. And then out of the middle of the blue one night, popped into my head, build a paddle, make sure you cut half a tennis ball or a third off the top of a tennis ball, put it on top of that paddle, and what's going to happen is the fur on the tennis ball is going to make his brain go, that's interesting, that's something new. And it's going to spread his fingers and put his hand in a sort of a curved shape, which you need to hold and get grip on the water. And so I built it and put it in front of him, and it solved his problem almost immediately. So these ideas that you get, don't ignore them. Write them down, explore them, put them in front of your kids. I had no problem waking up in the middle of the night and then showing up at the pool and saying, hey, we're going to play with this today. And the kids would be like laughing, knowing, coach had another one of his harebrained ideas that showed up in the middle of the night. And many of them didn't go anywhere, but once in a while, they would come to fruition, and more often than not, the kids would actually explore and go in a completely the direction that actually led to something very good. So I think creative moments are wonderful opportunities, and they can bring value to you when you allow them to bring value to you. As I said before, I feel too many coaches place too high a value on defining competitions or end of the season style competitions or rivalry games. And because those types of events carry a lot of stress, if your athletes feel like you as a coach are going to live and die on whether they do or don't do well, whether your value as a coach depends on whether they do or don't do well, then all you're doing is adding a whole new layer of stress on your athletes' backs. And they don't need that, right? They have enough stress dealing with this as it is. I want them to celebrate the opportunity to be able to realize all the hard work they've done, and to really feel the joy of being able to compete. Approach these opportunities with the joy to just kind of be able to put it on the line without criminations, right? I want to make sure that, I don't measure them based on what they did as a human being. They can come to me afterwards whether they won or lost, and I'm going to care about them just the same. If they need a hug or a high five, it doesn't matter what it is. We're still going to go on and work on the process to help them achieve their organic potential. I also felt like in those types of competitions that I didn't want to overcoach them. I feel like if you overcoach kids, you tend to coddle them. If they're 8, 9, and 10-year-olds, they need to have some instruction pre and post race, but I think even that needs to be handled in a better way. But as a a coach at the elite level, I allowed I allowed my athletes to design what it was they were going to do. I taught them everything they needed to know in day-to-day training. I gave them all the support and confidence in day-to-day training to make all the decisions they needed to make to prepare to race at the peak level. If they wanted me a little bit involved, then I would. In many cases, I never even pulled out a stopwatch in warm-up. The only thing I was there really for was to just, pump them up a little more, tell them I just looking forward to watching them compete, that they look great, they look awesome, just basic things like that. And then I'd leave the deck and go sit up in the bleachers and to watch them the race. They never came to me before, they never came to me afterwards. At the end of the competition, when the competition that period had ended, then I would go and interact with them to find out how they felt about things, what they learned and stuff like that. But I really feel like the value you get from coaching really comes more from that day-to-day element of coaching than these experiences. And yes, these experiences, these performance moments experiences can be wonderful. Yes, it's wonderful to watch kids win gold medals. It's wonderful to watch kids break world records. It's just as wonderful to watch a 6-year-old hit a golf ball really well for the first time. That it's the same feeling. So to me, the day-to-day experiences that bring value to your coach are just as important as performance moments. And I hope as coaches you understand that if you take the time to really look at the breadth of things that you can gain value from, I think it will strengthen your ability to be in that day-to-day grind of being a coach.